Good afternoon, everyone.
You didn't get your your gavel. The meeting will be called to order at 4:31 p.m. Commissioners present are Vice President Mall, who will be serving as president since President Mary Wardell Garducci is excused. Other commissioners present are Ono, Wolf, Lee, Dunning, and Wong.
Welcome, everyone, to the July 18th San Francisco Public Library Commission. Is there any public comment?
Good afternoon, commissioners and others. Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. I'm very disappointed that the agenda does not include things like the progress that's been made in budgetary matters for the library with respect to the library's budget, including RFID, the privacy-busting technology that the library presumably is in the process of installing and has some more money coming when the budget is approved. Neither is there a report about RFID progress, which initially was funded at $3.4 million last year. I'm also disappointed that there's not anything about the progress at the Board of Supervisors regarding fines and fees, in this case fines only, and the fact that you have essentially hidden from the public the fact that fees are completely ignored in the report that you made in terms of their impacts, which are essentially the same as or even worse than fines, and in the fact that you're leaving them completely untouched. That means that people who owe fees and people who lose books or other fees that hurt the library, I believe, and hurt the public, including copying fees. One copy, 10 cents, but you can't get it without buying a $1 card. That could be somebody's lunch money. The legislation that you have forwarded improved in part, I think, based on our urging you to get rid of the fines that were on the books, and that was an improvement, so that fines going forward and fines on the books are being eliminated, but not the many fees that the library has, including $500 for the loss or damage to a PC and other such fees. For most folks, fines and fees are a unity. They're what the library charges to the public, and they don't differentiate. I'm reading one of many interesting books on problems with the world of the internet, and it's Jaron Lanier, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now. And so I'll read a little bit from the blurb. And I'm concerned because the library seems to be on a love Facebook, love Instagram, and so on. It's advertised in the monthly publication as well as other places all over the library. How can we remain autonomous in a world where we are under continual surveillance and are constantly being prodded by algorithms run by some of the richest corporations in history that have no way of making money other than being paid to manipulate our behavior?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item, additional public comment. Thank you, Teresa. Before we go on with our next agenda item, which is the Branch Capital Projects update, we are happy to welcome Supervisor.
Oh.
No, he's not here?
Well, yeah, he's here.
He's here.
Is he going to be on that item?
Yes. No, just acknowledge.
Okay. Are you going to call that item?
Yes.
Okay. Call the item.
Pardon me?
You should call the item.
Okay, the item is the Branch Capital Projects update, and I just wanted to welcome the supervisor, Asha Safai, and his assistant, Monica Chinchilla.
Thank you, Vice President Mall, and good evening, commissioners, and welcome Supervisor Safai and Monica.
Commissioners, you may recall that we last reported out to the Commission back in April on the status of the branch capital projects. This afternoon, we're fortunate to have our partners from Public Works present. Lourdes Garcia, Senior Architect and Section Manager for the Bureau of Architecture. She will provide an update on the branch capital projects. And following her presentation, we'll have some remarks from Supervisor Safai and his aide on this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here to provide a quick update on our 3 branch renovation projects. Oh, yeah, there we go. I'd like to begin with Mission Branch. A quick update on Mission Branch. We had our initial meetings with Planning and Historic to discuss a process for this library renovation. We've also completed phase 1 of Civic Design Review, where we received approval on June 17th to proceed developing our concept. They provided design feedback for us to consider as we develop our design in the months to come. Following are some slides that were presented at CDR. For context, the library mainly faces 24th Street and has Orange Alley and Bartlett on either side, backed up to the property line to the south. Our proposal includes relocating the main entrance back to 24th Street. That was the original location of the main entrance for the Carnegie. Doing this will allow the current entrance off of Bartlett to be solely used for community room entrance after hours. It also provides for an area that can be programmed as an active space at the Bartlett entrance for possible outdoor reading or overflow. This is still being developed. In terms of the layout of the interior spaces of the library, we're proposing to reconfigure the interior to allow for larger new entry and larger program spaces. The community room facing Bartlett regains its original size and location. That's the area to the left in magenta on level 1. The area to the right in yellow is the expansion of the children's reading area. It allows for a larger children's reading area and reading room. On the upper level, we're looking to maintain the large reading space that is unique to the Carnegies, and we're proposing to relocate or restore the original location for the main entrance. This was supported by CDR and supported greatly by the community. The expansion on the level 2 also provides a separate quiet space from the main floor for reading. On the exterior design, CDR approved the design direction. The committee supports the idea that the addition not mimic the Carnegie architecture, but rather acts as a backdrop to the Carnegie Library. Some recommendations from CDR included carrying the idea of the datum of the base from the Carnegie over into the addition, and continuing to develop and highlight the rhythm of the large windows in the contemporary architecture that faces Orange Alley. Our schedule and next steps for this branch is to seek historic planning approvals in the fall of 2019. We will follow up with another community meeting in November to present our findings and where we are to date with the design. We look to complete the design in the spring of 2020 with putting it out to bid that fall of 2020. We look to start construction in the winter of 2020, looking at December, January. The library is looking for temporary location for 2 years during construction, and our hope is that the library reopens in the fall of 2022. Our next branch is the Ocean View Branch Library. An update on the Ocean View Branch Library is that we've had public outreach meetings, which were held in March of this year. We presented the findings from our original feasibility study at these meetings and updated the community. We also presented building renovation proposals. At these meetings, the community stated a desire for a larger library. They felt the program needed to be larger to service the community's needs. With that, the library has embarked at looking at possible locations for a new library. They've started at identifying a site for this study. There's an agreement in place right now with Public Works that has been signed for us to develop a site feasibility study, and we've begun that process. The scope for the site feasibility study. First, we've identified a site through the collaborative process with the library, Public Works, and Supervisor Safai's office. In that study, we hope to look at building and landscape sketches, do some studies along the site, which is located on Head and Brotherhood Mini Park. We're going to study a range of possible building sizes and height that conforms to our planning guidelines, analyze access, vehicular, pedestrian, and transit. We're going to look at the connections to a community garden, playground, possible open space, and then analyze what utilities are in place at this location with respect to water, power, and sewer. At the end, we also are looking to provide a concept estimate with this study so that the site can be looked at in totality with an estimate, with a budget. Some context of this site. Again, it's located at Head and Brotherhood Mini Park. The area circled in yellow is the study site. Some landmarks to orient us is to the north, there's Mini Levy Park. Just to the north of this location is our existing Ocean View Library. To the west is Park Merced. To the south of 280, there's a shopping area. This location offers the opportunity to provide services to the community to the north and to the south. A closer look at this site. It is city-owned property. It is located, the north borders on Head and Victoria Streets. To the south, it's along Brotherhood Way. This site offers the opportunity to also create a destination with amenities. It can be looked at as a gateway to the community along Brotherhood Way. We will study vehicle access, possibly from Brotherhood Way, pedestrian access, possibly from the north and along Head Street. And we'll also study some possible amenities. There is an existing mini park area with basketball courts. Maybe we'll need to replace that, and the area of the site offers enough real estate where we can have outdoor amenities as well, a link or connection to outdoor spaces. Again, this is the first study under consideration. A schedule for our next steps is to look at our site studies for the next 2 months with a complete feasibility study in September of 2019. This will also have a concept cost estimate. The library will report back to the Library Commission in October with our findings, and then bring that information back to the community in November. The last branch update is Chinatown Branch Library. At Chinatown Branch, we've held our community outreach meetings last month. We presented our findings from our initial feasibility study and updated the community on that study. We had 3 events in June: a story time event on Saturday the 15th at 11 a.m., a Chinese language event later that afternoon at 1, and an English language event a couple days later on June 18th. At this event, we received input from the community on their programmatic needs so that we consider them as we embark on the concept design and programming phase of this project. Schedule for this library is to begin the programming phase where we would incorporate feedback from the community, and that would start in the fall of this year, followed by concept designs in the winter of 2020, and then reporting back out to the community in the spring of 2020. Afterwards, we would begin our documentation of the design and prepare and package the project for bidding in the summer of 2021. This, again, is pending funding availability at that point. Our hope is for construction to start in the fall of 2021. Library will also be looking at temporary location for 2 years, with the hope of the library reopening in the summer of 2023. This concludes our update for the 3 branches. Thank you.
Thank you, Lourdes. And as one of the 3 branch capital projects, the Ocean View Branch Library project is greatly benefiting from the support of the Office of Supervisor Safai. His aide, it's wonderful to have his aide, Monica Chinchilla, and Supervisor Safai present this evening. They've both been extremely collaborative in helping us to engage the community and identify city-owned property in the neighborhood. Supervisor Safai and his legislative aide, Monica, they're present here this evening to present some information about the Ocean View project.
Good evening, Commissioners. How are you? Good. All right. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. This, to me, is super exciting. We have a really strong base of community users that are very excited about the possibility that this presents for Ocean View Branch, right? Okay. So we have the smallest neighborhood library in the entire city. There was the opportunity to have a conversation about potentially renovating that space. I think to Mayor Brown's credit, Mayor Willie Brown, they made a very aggressive move responding to the needs of the neighborhood then, but the space is really confined. And so myself and City Librarian Lambert and his team, we had a conversation and said, let's go down and look at just down the street. It's about a block away on Brotherhood Way. There is a lot of open space. It's not your traditional open space. It's not like it's grass where people have picnics or people are using in a different way. It's open space that the community cares about, but I think it could be reprogrammed in a very sensitive way. That's a good shot of it right there. It's sloped, so it's not really usable in a lot of ways, but there is a little tiny mini park, that's Reckin Park, that we would put it adjacent to that we could actually help to renovate. And so we're super excited about the possibility of what this site could bring. We feel like it could be an impactful, transformative project where we would go from the smallest to the largest. We're hoping it would be something over 20,000 square feet. It would be something that would draw from multiple neighborhoods, and it would be a different type of model. That's what we've discussed with your librarian. We've had some really good conversations with Mayor Breed. She is also very excited and supportive of this concept. And I think you're going to hear from some of the neighbors today. And so the idea is it wouldn't just be something that serves that immediate neighborhood, would also could pull from some of the adjacent neighborhoods as well. It's very accessible by public transportation. Right up the street is the light rail. And then we also have Brotherhood Way, and so hopefully would also build in some parking. In Public Works, we've reached out to them. They're very excited about the potential for this project and co-locate some things on site. So that's my my pitch. I see some smiles. I see some skeptical looks on faces. Because they're like, wait a minute, that sounds really big. But sorry, we want to go from last to first. So that's just, that's what we're thinking. The good news is I know you have some money in the budget. I think the asset that's there could potentially be sold to raise some additional funds. And as I said, Mayor Breed is 100% on board and excited about this project and working with us on it. So I believe that there would be additional allocations. But I just wanted to say on behalf of this neighborhood that has one of the highest, if not the highest, concentration of seniors aging in place, has the highest concentration of children under the age of 18, and has a lot of long-time San Franciscans, people that have lived there 30, 40, 50 years. This is in many ways a dream deferred. This is a dream and conversation that people have had for decades about having something that could be impactful, that could be community-based and community-serving. So the library with community program space that could be doing things from basically children to seniors. So that's one of the arguments for this being a really large space. And I think if you look at the usage of the Ocean View Branch Library, it's one of the highest in the area. And so there's significant demand. So that's my pitch. That's what I'm here to push you guys on. I'm seeing more smiles on your faces now, so that's good. So I appreciate, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to respond to any questions or any reactions to people that they might have.
Thank you, Supervisor. I believe they have to take public comment next.
I get it. Sometimes they ask questions from the supervisor. That happens a lot at planning. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for the presentation. Is there any public comment?
Go ahead. Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Thank you for the presentation. I'm disappointed that there hasn't been more information prior to the public meetings here at the Commission. I think that folks who follow the Commission or the minutes of the Commission or the agendas might like to know when there are public meetings about important things like new libraries. There are other times when the Library Commission seems to be an unfortunate spot that doesn't get information or discuss information. Later on, there's the Fuhrman Fund, and there hasn't been any discussion about a sale of property. With respect to the Mission and the Ocean View, in a sense, both of those are projects that will correct or improve on serious problems or mistakes that one might say happened with the original design. The Mission branch had a grand stairway that went up into the main reading area and instead replaced it with the current tiny little opening where you have to scurry in, and there's a point at which there's about 2 people wide a space for the entry into the entire building, and you kind of slide into the main reading room at one end at one side. And the Ocean View always had a problem with not only its size in general, but the fact that there was a second story that was difficult to staff and to use, and so on and so forth. So I'm glad that there are improvements planned. As I said, I'd like more information and more in advance at the Commission so that all those who might be interested can participate or even just have an option. There's no mention of costs here or what the budget might be for any of this stuff, and I think that's an important discussion that needs to happen in terms of planning. What's the budget, what's the limit, and so on. And another thing that's very important is the library providing a service to the public, or is it just building, just spending money on building, building, building? Why do I say that? because on 2 of these projects, you've mentioned a 2-year period when you want to have an alternate space. On 1 of them, you've mentioned nothing about alternate space. And during the bond program, the branch library improvement program, there were many places that had either no alternate spots at all or no relatively permanent spots. In my branch alone, the Park branch, there was a bookmobile that came for 7.5 hours a week, parked multiple blocks away with not even proper signage that would let you know where to find the alternate library and what the hours were. And that was for a library that was open for basically 5 days a week or more for the public, and that was the replacement that we got. I think that the commission, and I hope the supervisor and the officials in town, commit to providing as full a service as possible while these libraries are closed for building or renovation. Thank you.
Additional public comment?
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Christensen. I am an officer in a neighborhood association, but I'm speaking strictly as an individual. The proposal, I think, should go forward. I would like to be involved in the aspects of where it's going to be located on that plot. If it's set back off of Brotherhood Way, that's good. If it's going to be up on Brotherhood Way, that is not good, because it's going to take and break up the green belt that is existing. That brings up a very interesting point. This is Public Works land. Is this the beginning of the destruction of the Brotherhood Way green belt? I certainly hope not. I hope that the library can be put in there if it's set back right against Head Street, but any other attempt for this to be the beginning of the demise of the Brotherhood green belt for more building and other things will be opposed. So my concern is that. I would like to be involved. I think the feasibility study should go forward. I think that's a positive step, and I support Supervisor Asha Safai's vision, as long as it's set back and we maintain the green belt. And I'd like to speak further at another time, but I would also like to be involved every step of the way. Thank you.
Additional public comment?
Yes, I'm Glenn Rogers. I'm a landscape architect. I'm opposed to this project. And I'm opposed to the project because the green belt is really there because these soils are considered to be organic in nature. And this Brotherhood Drive is actually an earthquake fault. So this is actually, the reason this is a green belt is because it's considered to be dangerous to build here. That being said, I went and I spoke with a librarian, and they mentioned that the new location is going to be 2 blocks away from the existing transportation. In speaking with her further, she mentioned a 2-story addition to the existing library could be an ideal solution. I was looking at the structure of the library. It was very robust. And I believe it could easily take on 2 stories. The librarian mentioned the library needed to be closer to Minnie and Lovey Ward Athletic Center. This new location is further away than the proposed library. Numerous churches could be purchased using eminent domain closer to the Minnie and Lovely Ward Center. Churches on Farallons and Capitol Street are better suited for development than the proposed site. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Wait, I think there's there's someone before you.
Well, my name is Glenn Takeyama, and I live in the neighborhood there, and I also am concerned about the Greenbelt because that is dedicated open space for the neighbors and everything else. I'm concerned that there will be, this is just the beginning of some sort of slippery slope of all the other buildings that may go in there, especially since the soils, it's very sandy soil and probably very difficult to pound pilings in it and everything. But anyway, that's another discussion. The other thing I'm concerned about is traffic in that area. Brotherhood Way is a very, very speedy roadway. The speed limit there is 45 miles an hour, and most people drive in excess of that. With a public building there, with people coming from south of Brotherhood Way trying to get across, there are very few. There's a signal at Arch, and then there's another one at the beginning of, I guess that's Capitol over there. It could be very dangerous unless, with lighting and other traffic lights put in there. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying that this is going to require some very deep thought about the future of the Brotherhood Way Greenbelt and for pedestrian safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary Harris. I'm president of Oh My Neighbors in Action. Some of our members are sitting in the audience today. I don't know whether they're going to speak or not. I've lived in the Ingleside for 45 years and raised 4 children there. I started getting involved after several homicides happened in the neighborhood, and Minnie and Lovey Ward were working and doing a prayer circle and trying to clean up the neighborhood with the police, city attorney, and DA. I said to my husband, we need to join them. When I did join them, I, as I said, lived in the Ingleside, but I worked in Pacific Heights, and I noticed such a dramatic difference in the schools, the parks, and the libraries. So first we started at Sheridan School. It took 3 school bonds, which is quite a lot, to get that school rebuilt. For 17 years it was bungalows. And then I looked at the library, the smallest library, and the librarian told us all the problems with the library. And I said, well, what can we do about that? And she said, well, they're offering us a temporary library. And I said, well, they already offered us a temporary school. That lasted 17 years and 3 bonds later. So I really wasn't interested in undertaking that proposition. So I organized a meeting which over 50 people came, mostly community leaders, and we voted to move forward and go to Mayor Brown and ask him for permanent library. We were very, very grateful. And then I went and worked on the rec center and had that rebuilt. So here we are again. And I'm so excited because this time we won't be the last. We won't be the smallest. And the need is there. I think that we have a population of 1/4 under 18, the immigrant families, the families that citywide have higher education, 50% or more, when we're down to 28%. The need is definitely there. And I support our supervisor's idea. I hope that you'll look forward in this feasibility study. I've also asked Mayor Breed for her support. She's supportive. I would ask that we would get the same amount of money as the other 2 libraries, Mission and Chinatown. I think that's only equitable. And I hope that we can someday, a few years down the line, look forward to having a robust, vibrant library that serves our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Additional public comment.
Good evening, Al Harris, former library commissioner, and I'm here to support this library. That green space and open space there is homeless encampment, and it doesn't get very much use. I think a new library there would be really, really great for the community and to make use of that space. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Roberto Lopez, and I live in the neighborhood, and I just want to echo what Al said in regards to that space being underutilized. I walk by there all the time. It's rare that I see anyone utilizing that mini park, and I think it would be a great location for a library. And I think all the concerns that were brought forth in regards to traffic, I have full confidence in Supervisor Safai in mitigating any of those concerns, and I think this is the ideal spot. And as someone, full disclaimer, I work for the city and county of San Francisco, and I work directly with the public, and every neighborhood says they're all ignored. This is the neighborhood that's ignored. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Ariella, and I live on Head Street, just a block up from where the site is being proposed, and I'm really excited about the project. I'm a San Francisco native, and I grew up for much of my childhood in Park Merced nearby, and the neighborhood just really doesn't have much of anything there. So there's like a cafe opening, and it's like the biggest news of the entire neighborhood. Yeah, I mean, it's big on Nextdoor. So this, I feel like, would make another beautiful complement to the Minnie and Levy Ward Center and have a place for us to all as a community to convene. So thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more public comment, oh, there is, okay.
Hello, my name is Edna James, and I've been here before. As I said, I'm part of the Council for Neighborhood Libraries, representing Ocean View Library. And as I said, for 20 years, I have sat and I watched a bond be passed without envy and looked at all the other libraries some were new and some were renovated, but now is our time. And I think it's a good proposal. We looked at it. It's in between the two schools. The two elementary schools is close, very close proximity. One may have a block or two to walk down that area, but it's a very decent area. And I want to thank our supervisor for overseeing this and looking at that site. But we wish this project to go forward, and we're in need of it, and I want to see that it go to fruition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else want to say anything in the public? I think I speak for my commissioners in thanking the public for coming today and hearing your thoughts. Commission discussion?
Thank you all for your comments. I had the pleasure of visiting Ocean View Branch and also taking a look at this proposed location. So I feel excited about possibilities and the recognition that the branch is in need of support, and that I feel the use of the San Francisco Public Library funds to renovate, upgrade, potentially change the location is going to be very well used and important for this community. I want to just say, though, that I think what's going to be very important is the access issue. So I think when the feasibility study is done, the issue of access will be really critical. In touring many branch libraries throughout the city, you begin to understand that the success of a branch library is because its location and its proximity to commerce, to education, to parks and recs. And so I think thinking through how this new location can really bring the community together and create something more complex, more diverse, will ensure a successful new facility if that's what happens. But without that kind of bringing together of these different forces, it won't succeed. And I think Brotherhood Way is really challenging, and how you get a turnaround and pedestrian activity there and pedestrian safety will be really important. But I have the comments to say on the other branches, but I just want to say that with Ocean View, I'm excited about exploring possibilities of using the existing location, this new location, it is time to really invest in providing services in that area. Thank you. I'll go back.
Teresa?
Thank you all for attending and also for your comments. I'm sorry I wasn't at any of the public engagement meetings. As they go forward, I would like to attend some of the ones at Ocean View, and like the previous commissioner, I have seen the branch, and I do have some concerns about the new site, especially the accessibility. Our libraries, we want to make sure that they're safe in a lot of different ways, and especially getting there and getting home. So I understand Brotherhood Way, I understand the expansion and the need. And we would like to continue going forward with this proposal, and we appreciate your concern. But I do also want to just remind everyone, we also have the other two libraries that we're looking at, Mission and Chinatown, which are also a potential remodeling and an expansion. So we do have a lot on our plate, but we do appreciate it when we do hear from the patrons, because you guys are the community that uses it, and we want to make sure that we meet your needs. So thank you.
Thank you. Great update. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the information. A couple questions about the Mission branch. The temporary, because that's the first one coming up in terms of timing, and it says about a 2-year for the library temporary location. And I am curious sort of what that process is for identifying and securing that temporary location, and what, if any, involvement the commission has in that decision and process.
Thank you for the question. We're certainly open to any leads or suggestions you have for temporary spaces. Currently, our branches division has been canvassing the neighborhood, engaging with community-based organizations, nonprofits, and exploring partnerships. We have a preliminary exploration or discussion going on right now with City College, the Mission campus. But I don't think we have firmed that up completely yet.
And do we have like sort of requirements, like for a temporary location, it has to meet these criteria, be this size? Like how do we go about doing that evaluation?
We do not have prescriptive sizes in mind yet or codified. We do want to be able to deliver basic library services, so we want to be able to circulate materials. We want to have a destination where residents in that neighborhood can pick up their holds and request materials from other locations. Basic computing access would be nice if we can make that happen. You know, the programming that we deliver can be done in a temporary space, or we can explore other opportunities for delivering library programs in other nonprofit spaces in the neighborhood. So we're still fleshing out the service plan, and it will be really contingent upon what kind of space we can identify.
Yeah, because I mean, that's going to be, 2 years is a long period of time, and so I have a concern that the community is going to still get a reasonable level of service. Obviously not the same as if the thing's still open, but, and I would hope that we'd keep the commission updated over the next year as we start to identify that, because I'm not sure whether we approve it or we're just informed or what that process looks like.
Absolutely.
And then the other question that I have is, I have a concern, I mean, I have not physically been to this proposed site for the Ocean View. I'm now going to make a priority to take a look at it. My concern is we often will get sort of honed in on a site, and then the community gets really excited about a new library, and then it sort of becomes a fait accompli, no matter what the costs or obstacles or barriers might be to actually making it successful. So my question is, have we looked at any other sites so that we don't get all attached to this one? And then if we don't use this site for a library, what do we know what the city's plan is for that? Like, what's the opportunity cost? Like, what else might they do with that space? Like, if we put a library there, what does that preclude something else happening to that space?
We have been engaged in a very collaborative conversation with the Department of Public Works and the Office of Supervisor Safai about city-owned property in this corridor. And we wanted to fully explore the possibility of constructing on city-owned property because that can contribute greatly to keeping the cost down. Part of the value of commissioning this feasibility study is that we will gain some cost estimates, and we will bring that back to the commission in October as our target. And it really will determine whether or not this site is viable and give you some cost estimates to consider for the next budget cycle coming up. If for some reason this site was determined not viable, then we would need to engage with our partners and also the real estate department for the city and perhaps do a broader canvas of the district.
Yeah, my request then would just be like that we not wait until that one is good or bad before we start that process. Like if we could in parallel be continuing to look at other backup plans.
That's good
so that we don't get
feedback.
all sort of honed in on one and then it doubles its cost before we know and we're all attached to that.
And to that end, the real estate department is aware that this project is in flight, and they have been on call or poised to assist in this endeavor. We have had some initial conversations with them about exploring other sites.
Okay. And then the last comment I'll make is I think the supervisor or someone mentioned that Mayor Breed is excited about it. Is her feedback that she's excited about building a new library? Is it about building a new library on this site? Is it about building a 20,000 square foot library on this site? How specific was her support and feedback?
Her excitement.
Not to put words in the mayor's mouth, but I will.
You got that in the minutes, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay. She can correct me later if she wants to, but we talked about a 20,000 square foot library. We told her the exact location. We told her it was down the street from the existing branch. We told her, in fact, it was right around the time that the librarian was made the permanent librarian. So this was all timely. She was very excited about that, and she has given her full support to that concept.
And I think, didn't you say something about additional resources, or I thought there was some comment about that?
Well, the idea is
How
we
invested is she in this?
we have continued. Well, we have continued to receive the ERAF funds that have come in, right? And so we've gotten additional resources allocated that way. And so she is committed to seeing this project through. We haven't talked specifically about budget allocations. I'm predicting that we'll have additional resources coming in ERAF in the following year. And then in terms of the overall conversations, as we get closer, we can sharpen our pencils. But I would imagine that there's a significant amount of money from general fund that comes automatically to the library, it's turned set aside, but then there's some discretionary fund conversation. And we haven't gotten into that level of detail yet, because I think it's a little far off to we don't even know what gap we would be filling, right? Because they haven't done the feasibility. But just to be clear, she is super excited about this particular site, this particular project, and this idea. And one thing I didn't mention is we have continued to have more conversations with the community to get their feedback, along with some of the leaders that you see here. And I have to tell you, in all my years of working in local government and now being an elected official for 3 years, I have never received more of and you probably know this as commissioners, I was not aware of this as much. I have never received a more enthusiastic response than I have when we talked about doing this library project as proposed. Literally, I got a standing ovation at our District 11 dinner with like 200 people. I talked about building affordable housing and half the room stood up. The entire room stood up for the library.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all my comments and questions, thank you.
Thank you, everyone who presented and who came to the commission meeting tonight. I share Commissioner Dunning's overall sentiment. I think there's so many people who are generally optimistic about this site, about this project on the commission, the staff, the leadership, everywhere. But I'm cautious to let pure optimism get in the way of an actionable, achievable outcome. Right? Let's not let excitement get in the way of us finding a solution that's not just good now, but in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So, I mean, for me, it's, I'm excited to see all the support. I'm excited to see all the work that's being done to get all the details right. I trust leadership, Public Works, everyone to do that, and they've shown that they can do that over and over again. So for me, it's, let's see what comes back in October, and then let's have more discussions about what comes. But for now, I'm enjoying the excitement, and I hope everyone can stay patient until we get the study back.
Yeah, thanks for the input. I've got two questions that is about Ocean View. Early on from the public, there was a mention about adding two stories upon existing site. How much square footage would add to the existing site?
So I'll take a
If that
stab
were
at
the
this,
case.
and Lourdes is also here, senior architect for Public Works. In the feasibility study that was initially done, there were some test fits, and we have done some community engagement meetings with the Ocean View neighborhood. That topic of discussion did come up at the community meetings we had with the Ocean View neighborhood. And my understanding is that there are some zoning requirements and some height limits for that neighborhood, but the prospect of adding a third floor to the existing site has some potential, but I'm going to turn it over to Lourdes, if you could speak to that in any greater detail with subject matter expertise.
We, in general, looked at a reconfiguration of the existing footprint and the two levels and how we might find or capture more space, open it up on the interior. There are some limitations in terms of planning with going higher that would take us down a different path with variances and whatnot. But structurally, we're not confident that the building as it is could handle another level, so that would increase costs in terms of the addition of another floor.
So in short, that is not an option, it sounded like. I mean, at this stage that...
Well, I would never say never. It just depends on what we have in terms of budget. We'd have to do an analysis of the current structural ability of what's in place and how we could piggyback something onto that. So that it would just require more studies and more conversations with the planning department. The operations, we need feedback from the library in terms of operations, if you want to speak to that, Michael.
So it sounds like it's a separate feasibility study and it's not a part and parcel of...
It's not part of this endeavor, and as Lourdes alluded to, there would be some operational challenges of splitting the existing staff across 3 levels, as we're already challenged with the existing staff maintaining 2 levels at the Ocean View branch.
So the staffing is not based on footage, because if the footage is 20,000, let's say that if it gotten more, whereas there's still 20,000, the 3 floor, would it the same staff or different number of staff?
Our intention is to staff the Ocean View Library, whether it's at the existing site or the future site, with the same team that we currently have. We could consider the staffing complement once we know what the building design is. But as you know, we have been operating in a no new FTE environment. So if we were going to add additional staff to that team, we would have to look within for that capacity.
Okay, so there are more variables to consider even after the site study. Right, thank you.
The only thing I would like to add is that I applaud the neighborhood's dream of being the largest. 20,000 square feet, I don't know what the second largest, what is the second largest?
The Chinatown Branch Library is approximately 19,000 square feet, so a 20,000 square foot library would be the largest in the system for branch libraries.
Well, I definitely applaud the vision, and I also have been in that library, and it seemed to me that it was in need of something. It was in need of, it was in need of a lot, really. I mean, it was in need of a cup of coffee, actually.
There's a cafe opening nearby.
Yeah, I heard. Right. So I think it would just give a real big bolt shot in the arm to the whole neighborhood to have a facility like this. But as one of my fellow commissioners said, we can't let our excitement overshadow the practical nature of what's going on. So I look forward to the feasibility study.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that wraps that agenda item up. The next conversation is about the Fuhrman Bequest land parcels sale. And
Yes. Thank you, Vice President Mall.
you're welcome. Go
Commissioners, you have a number of explanatory documents in your packet. I'd like to call your attention to the staff report from the City and County of San Francisco's Real Estate Department. This document provides some background on the Fuhrman Bequest assets in Fresno and Kern counties. There's also a draft resolution for you to consider in making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to approve the sale of some assets located in Fresno County. The author of the staff report is John Updike. He's a senior project manager for the Real Estate Department, and he's here this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce him as he will provide you with a presentation regarding the proposed sale of assets located in Fresno County.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it very much. Commissioners, thank you so much for your time to discuss this. The bulk of my presentation is going to be focused on one particular property that is an opportunity for sale that requires your consideration and hopefully action, and then subsequently that of the Board of Supervisors. But in order to really have that discussion, we felt it was time to give you some context to why this particular item's coming forward and what may be coming forward additionally this fall and next spring for your further consideration. So the Fuhrman Bequest properties came to the city in 1941 through the generosity of the estate of Alfred Fuhrman after he passed away. There were many beneficiaries of his assets at that time. The city was fortunate to be the main beneficiary of several items, property, cash, stocks, a whole slew of items that at that time was valued in excess of $100,000, which in 1941 was a pretty healthy estate. Consider the timing of that, 1941, so the city decided to dispose of much of what they received to monetize that immediately. And those benefits and any subsequent benefits from this bequest were to be split 50-50 between the public library and the Recreation and Park Department, as this slide states, for books on economic and political subjects and the further adornment of Golden Gate Park. That's the reading from the bequest. The use by the library was subsequently expanded, since that is a very particular item, books on economic and political subjects, and then the court confirmed that expansion following city attorney advice. That was over 30 years ago. So since then, these properties, many of them have simply been grazing opportunities or non-use opportunities. There are a number of assets we're going to talk about here in Kern and Fresno County. As I say, everything else relative to the bequest has been sold, and so those proceeds were received over the years. So let's talk in particular about what's left from the Fuhrman estate and what we're doing with them. So again, the subject primarily of this discussion is a property in Fresno County, just outside of Coalinga, California. But there are also 10 additional parcels in Kern County, sprinkled in and around the Bakersfield area. So we have 1,400 acres of land that you may get really tired of hearing from me by spring of next year as I bring these property transactions forward to you. We hope we will be able to do it in a fashion that doesn't take up a lot of your time. We're able to bundle these transactions, but I can't guarantee that, so I may be here several times. Right now, we have one opportunity in Fresno County. Give you a sense of the properties. These are probably the nicest parcels, the pictures that you see here in Kern County, the areas that are close to watershed. There are also other parcels that are just flat, unvegetated desert landscapes, as you can imagine, in the area of Bakersfield and west of Bakersfield, where these properties lie. Let's talk about, in particular, this asset that's at issue today, where we have an opportunity for a sale of the property. So you see the city of Coalinga on the right of the slide here. This is just outside the city limits, 40 acres. This property has been leased by Oil Well Service Company. They're out of Santa Fe Springs since 1978. They have simply used it as a storage facility to serve the nearby oil industry. There was not any production or extraction of minerals from the property. It was just a storage location for the equipment that they provide to the oil companies in the area. They subsequently vacated the site, terminated their lease just within the last year. And so that presented to us the question of what do we do with these properties, and perhaps this is the time to dispose of them rather than release the property. So we engaged the services of an appraiser to understand the fair market value and the fair market lease potential from the site, and the numbers, as we indicate in subsequent slide here, made the decision pretty easy. Looking at probably around $500 a month in rental income as the potential if we can find a new tenant for the property, versus the potential of a sale, immediate receipt of $170,000. When you think about the return on investment, that decision is a pretty easy one to make, assuming you can find a buyer at the appraised value. So we then decided, let's look at all of the assets from the Fuhrman bequest. So let's look at these assets in Kern County as well, and the opportunities. Since if we have to secure the services of a brokerage firm from the Central Valley, that's going to be an effort in and of itself. Perhaps it's better to bundle this opportunity and provide that multiple parcels to put them on the market. So indeed, we have engaged in that since I returned from my brief hiatus after retirement. So since October, we secured the services of Cushman Wakefield and their affiliate brokerage firm, Pacific Commercial Realty Advisors. They have been representing the city on the sale of this particular property we're going to talk about in Fresno County, and are currently marketing some of the assets in Kern County for us. That was after a competitive solicitation. So as a result of that, they have secured a buyer at the appraised value of $170,000. There was some substantive negotiations to get us to that price, but we were pleased to be able to find an acceptable buyer who's willing to purchase the property under acceptable terms to the city and county of San Francisco. We are not the easiest party with respect to real estate transactions, and I believe the librarian can attest to on our various real estate deals. So we were pretty excited to see this opportunity. We are continuing to negotiate the finer points of the purchase and sale agreement, but we're in conceptual agreement and feel comfortable moving this forward now through the legislative process, and you are the first stop in that process as really you have the fiduciary responsibility here relative to these assets, since you are the receivers of 1/2 of their income. So we are here before you for this particular property in Coalinga to recommend a sale of the property to Richard Storti. That is the individual who has offered to purchase the property at $170,000, subject, of course, to the Board of Supervisors and Mayor approval, which we would subsequently seek after getting your input, as well as that of the Recreation and Park Commission. Before I open it up to any questions you might have, want to just give you a little tease for what will come. So we mentioned other properties. I believe in the staff report you've got some maps that give you a sense of the holdings that we have in and around Bakersfield. The bigger, more challenging parcel is that which sits in the Kern River oil field and has been producing oil and gas royalty revenue to us since a lease from the 1960s. So we will be back to you with respect to how we're going to deal with the eventual termination of that lease and transfer of that property in much more detail in the fall or perhaps first quarter of 2020. But right now we have one more immediate issue, this property in Fresno County. We'll have a lot more details and I think a pretty exciting multi-party transaction that seeks to preserve some of this land in perpetuity. We're really going to be doing some good things for Kern County relative to these assets. So that's to come, and today we have the one item before you. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah.
Public comment.
Public comment, please.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Thank you for this report. The Fuhrman Fund has had a long and troubled history here at the library, which is only faintly alluded to in the memorandum that you have received. I'm very concerned that, well, let me just say on the previous item, at least one of your commissioners was expressing concern about things developing in a way that presents you with a fait accompli. This looks like a similar thing to me. According to this, the property was, quote, the property was used for, the lease was terminated on January 31st, 2019. So 6 months ago, this was over. And now we're presented with, we already decided that we're going to sell it, we already got a buyer. This has never been discussed at the Library Commission. There was never, to my knowledge, any mention at all in the Library Commission. What if I wanted to buy that parcel and was willing to offer you double? I would have no way of knowing it. Nobody contacted me or Library Users Association. And I'm also concerned about whether there might be a conflict of interest to have a real estate firm that's going to presumably share in some of the $20,000 costs of sale, but is going to get a nice commission, which perhaps they wouldn't get if you continued renting the place for $500 a month or $6,000 a year, which looks like what it was presented, what was presented as an alternative. So I'm concerned about another fait accompli being presented to the Library Commission and to public. I'm concerned with how all these decisions were made, and I'm also very concerned that, generally speaking, public property should stay public and have public use and public control. There's a talk about a deed restriction here that would be placed on the buyer. Who's going to enforce that? Later in this memo, we talk about the costs of making sure cost of enforcement on another Fuhrman property or set of properties and how that's going to be funded. Who is going to watch and see that the new buyer is following the policy of the city? It certainly seems to me would be a lot easier to make sure that the city policy would be carried out on this property if the city continued to own it. So those are some very serious concerns that I've got with respect to how public this has been for the public here and to the commission. Again, who has made all these decisions and on what basis, and was there a conflict of interest? And why not keep this in the city's control if there are concerns about how the land will be used in the future?
Additional public comment? Commissioners?
I have, thank you very much for your presentation. You said that Rec and Park is also supposed to be part of this endowment. Have they approved, or we are the first step, as you had mentioned, so after us, it goes to Rec and Park and then the board?
That is correct, Commissioner. Just a quirk of the scheduling, we were actually attempting to coordinate this so that each commission would have taken the action today, because the Rec and Park Commission met earlier today, but we were not able to finalize the materials for their agenda, so they will take it up in their next meeting. And then once both commissions have taken their action, then the Board of Supervisors will receive it, and then they'll take the final action and give us direction to sell or not sell.
So if we said we did not approve it and Rec and Park Commission approves it, then it comes back here, or what would be?
That's an interesting question that I imagine the Deputy City Attorney has an answer to.
Commissioner, what the resolution here is a recommendation from the Library Commission to approve the sale, but it's ultimately up to the Board of Supervisors whether to sell the property. It's ultimately up to the Board of Supervisors whether to sell this property.
That's what okay, thank you.
Any questions? Any other questions?
Yes, I have one. In one of the slides, it says the market value is maximized at this time. How is that determined?
Commissioner, so in our discussions with both the appraiser of the property, independent appraiser that was hired by the city through CBRE, and discussions with the brokerage firm, they did feel that the value, while we're not seeing huge peaks and valleys in the Central Valley land market, it's relatively stable. And in fact, the value conclusion this year, similar to the value conclusion last year, they don't see it rising much. And if anything, as you know, there's continual discussions of some recessionary pressures in the future. That is our job in real estate, to kind of know what the market should foretell in the future. So there could be some softening in the land market, because this is really a speculative land opportunity. It's not a development opportunity. I could probably show you an aerial photo of Coalinga and the surrounding area from 30 years ago, and it'll look pretty much the same as the one I put up here. The growth is actually in the other direction, from the central part of Coalinga toward I-5, away from our property, because that's where the jail is located, which is really the prime economic driver in Coalinga. So we've gotten to know that market pretty well. We're kind of on the wrong side of the city in terms of growth.
Thank you.
I just had a question. In the documentation for the Board of Supervisors, it just says that the proceeds will get split between Rexon Park and the Library Department. But in the meeting agenda, it says 50% of net proceeds benefiting main library. So I just want to clarify, it's not necessarily allocated directly to the main library, it's allocated to the Library Department, correct?
That's correct.
So the agenda is wrong. It says Golden Gate Park, 50% of net proceeds benefiting main library. I just want to make sure.
That's correct. And the Library Commission, in considering the resolution this evening, you all have the purview to amend that
How we want to
resolution.
allocate that, right, okay. I just want to be clear about that. Because I was not going to be happy about it necessarily being already earmarked for the main library. Okay. I don't have any other questions. That's all.
I would just add that the disposition of these funds, whatever the library uses them for, has to be consistent with the trust agreement, which is for the, what was mentioned before, for the, I think it's been expanded, but it's for books about economic and financial matters, but I think it's been expanded to also cover databases, I believe.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So do we vote on a recommendation?
I move that we approve the, is it a resolution? For the, to the Board of Supervisors as presented.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, passed. Next is the city librarian's report.
Thank you, Vice President Mall. We have two reports this evening. and I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter. Suzanne Sakai is a special collections librarian in our Book Arts and Special Collections Department. She is going to be presenting the Living Library, Voices of Western Edition.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Suzanne Sakai, and I am the Special Collections Librarian at Book Arts and Special Collections here at the Main on the 6th floor. But prior to that, I was the Japanese language librarian at Western Edition, and hence why the project that I'm going to be talking about takes place there. So the Living Library is all about bringing the community together, making connections among community members through conversations, and also capturing those stories. So what's a living library? A living library, in it, books are real people. They're volunteers willing to share their life story, their personal life stories, and they get checked out by readers or members of the public to engage in one-on-one conversation, in this case, up to 30 minutes at a time. And living libraries serve as a catalyst to foster dialogue and understanding between strangers and provides the opportunity and safe space for community members to get to know one another. So how did this come about? So initially, when I was applying for the Friends Innovation Grant, I was thinking of starting a San Francisco chapter of the Human Library. The Human Library is an international organization and movement that began in Copenhagen in 2000 by a youth group in response to the growing violence against immigrants. It's essentially a way to challenge stigma and stereotypes. But as I was doing my research, I decided to pivot. First because, so the Human Library is trademarked. It's trademarked. It's an organization that's well established. And in order to use their name, you have to go through their applications process and have to adhere to a lot of their criteria. I felt like first of all, they were slow to response, and I thought that their criteria were a little limiting, and their focus was a little too broad from what I was trying to do because it focuses on stigma, stereotypes as a whole, whereas I wanted to focus more on the community and the people in it. So I decided to do my own thing and call it the Living Library, and it allowed me for more creative freedom as well. So the most challenging part, scariest part of this process was gathering the books themselves, gathering the volunteers. Especially, this was compounded by the fact that I had left Western Edition, so I was doing this remotely. So before I left, I put out a general call. The document that you see on the left is the call that I posted up at the Western Edition branch. And although it garnered a lot of interest, I didn't get any solid commitment. So I decided to reach out directly to people that I knew that I thought would make good books. And even though people declined some of my offers, they were all excited about this program. They thought it was a great idea. And they were honored to be invited, and some of them reached out to people that they knew who they thought would be a good fit. So definitely recommending leveraging your community contacts in order to make this project successful. And of course, with any library programs, publicity is very important. Wouldn't have been able to do it without the support of, both staff and the volunteers themselves. I also walked like 4 miles just flying around town to get the word out, and it worked. So the big day came by on June 8th. This was a special day because it was also the day of the branch open house. So we had it set up at the program room. The program room served as kind of a green room, or what I like to call the bookshelf, where all the books congregated at first. So let me briefly talk about the setup. So the beauty of this model, this living library / human library model, is that it is totally scalable. You can make it as fancy and big as you want or small and simple. I know some other libraries I've done, human libraries have done like an online registration system where people register beforehand, but I kept it really simple, just made it all walk-ups. So what the readers, when they first come into the room, they'll see these four simple steps. Number one, browse through the living book cards, which were set up on the table right when you come in. And after you look through the book cards, just like browsing through any books, like summaries, introduction, they choose the book they want, and they're able to check them out for 30 minutes at a time. And the rules also explain that if there's no one waiting in line for that book, they can renew them for up to another 30 minutes. And step 4 was filling out a survey. The way people can tell if a book has been checked out or not is on that whiteboard there. It lists all the titles of the books, and so if they were on loan, I would put a magnet that says on loan. If there was a wait list for them, I would put a magnet as well. So there's actually Commissioner John Lee looking through book cards right there. And on top of that, those were name tags that I had for each of the books with their titles. So let me see, would I be able to play the video with this clicker?
Unless it was embedded in your PowerPoint.
Okay, maybe not. So there's a video on the right that shows the setup, but it's okay, I'll just skip that. So this is the Living Library program in action. I was initially scared, as with any library program, that no one was going to show up. But I didn't. That was unfounded because it was highly successful. Everyone who came were really excited. You can tell in the pictures, just the pure joy that was emanating from everyone. There was a lot of community building going on. So it was also a really beautiful day. So when the readers came in to check out a book, they had the choice of either staying in that room to have their conversation or go outside in the courtyard. And it was such a beautiful day that all the benches started filling up. At one point, all the books were checked out. There was even a wait list. There's Michael on the bottom with District 5 Supervisor Valley Brown. I initially was hoping to get Mayor London Breed to show up since she grew up in the Western Addition, but being the mayor, she's busy, so it was nice of her to send Valley Brown in her stead. The picture in the middle, that's actually DJ Marilyn of the community-based radio KPOO. That's just volunteer DJ. And the two women that she's speaking to right there, I love that picture. It's just everything. She actually ended up booking those two women for her next show. So it's community building in action right there. And that's another reason why I'm really glad that I did it my way as a living library as opposed to the human library, because the human library really is strict about the books being anonymous and doesn't allow exchanging contact information. But here, I saw a lot of people exchanging contact information and, promising to keep in touch. So that was what I was looking for in this project. So I would say it was highly successful. The feedback that I received from both the books and the readers were all positive. This being a pilot program, I had specifically asked in the survey of, giving suggestions for, any room for improvement, pointers, but everyone just responded saying this was a great program, keep up the good work, bring it to our locations. There was one person who wanted it at Bernal, another at Maine. So everyone just is looking for something like this, for community building connections in their locations as well. So my project was actually twofold, one being the event itself, and the second part was actually documenting these stories because they are valuable pieces of oral local history, especially in this city where, there's constant flux. People are always leaving, new people are coming in. History is changing every day. So I felt it was really important to capture these stories and document them. So these videos. So I had, with the help of media services, I interviewed the books on film, and these videos are now up online on our YouTube channel. You can just look up SFPL Living Library Books and you'll be able to see them. I'm also happy to send the links. So here they are. They're all very, very interesting. I highly recommend watching them. So lastly, let me go back. I just wanted to thank everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you, and all the staff and the volunteers that made this program, a success, and especially the Friends for the innovation grant that allowed me to do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our next presenter this evening is our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships, Michelle Jeffers. She's going to be reporting out on Pride.
Hi, Commissioners. I am Michelle Jeffers, the Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships. Thank you for having me here to present on our Pride Month activities for the month of June. And I just want to say that this is really the work of our staff. I get the pleasure of presenting in front of you, but I really am so proud of all the amazing staff at SFPL and the rich array of programs that they put together this month, because it's such an important month in San Francisco and for our residents and library patrons. From radar superstars to queer historic sites around San Francisco, from Black Pride to AIDS memoirs to the politics of sexual privacy, the library hosted more than a dozen author talks alone, plus book clubs and lectures this month that highlighted Pride. I won't talk about every one of them, but among the offerings were several book launches this month, including the release of Gilbert Baker's posthumous memoir, Rainbow Warrior, My Life in Color. Gilbert is an artist and activist who created the iconic and globally recognized rainbow flag as the symbol of pride. In addition, we hosted a special event at the Oasis nightclub. Some of you might be familiar with this longstanding nightclub south of Market. It's a pretty fun place, but there we released the book We Are Everywhere, Protest, Power, and Pride in the History of Queer Liberation by Matthew Reimer and Leighton Brown. The Hormel Center Archives also hosted the closing reception for the inaugural Queer History Conference organized by San Francisco State, the state's College of Ethnic Studies. As part of the event, scholars and researchers from across the U.S. and beyond were introduced to queer history gems via our hands-on history programs. Sorry about that. In the film category, we screened a number of outstanding documentaries and features, including hosting the multi-part series Embracing the Love, LGBTQ Films from Southeast Asia, that was presented in partnership with the Filipino Arts and Cinema International. And we also showed the screening, the PBS documentary screening of Stonewall Uprising. Of course, this was the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. So in that same vein, we also hosted an exhibit in the Hormel Center and also at the Eureka Valley branch together, called Queer as German Folk, a Transatlantic Commemoration of the Stonewall Riots. This exhibit on demand was developed by a museum in Berlin and is being recreated in multiple cities, including Montreal, Toronto, Chicago, New York, Washington, Mexico City, and Guadalajara. And each city's exhibit included this transatlantic component, but what locally each city was doing around pride and recognition of the Stonewall riots. And ours was co-presented in partnership with the Goethe Institute of San Francisco, and our San Francisco component was curated by Jim Van Buskirk, the former manager of the Hormel Center. The Hormel Center archives, I didn't have a slide for this, but are also featured prominently in the new SFO Harvey Milk Terminal 1 exhibition, where you'll find items from Harvey Milk's papers reproduced on a grand scale. The archive staff worked closely with the airport's exhibition team to select and contribute materials from the Hormel Center and San Francisco History Center archives, and they attended a preview opening earlier on June 21st. But there is still a chance to go out there. A community day is scheduled for this Saturday, July 20th at the airport for the public. Because Pride always falls in the middle of our summer programming, we get the chance to say Happy Pride, Happy Stride. We offered a number of children's programs during Pride Month, including our signature Drag Queen Story Hours, which we held at 2 branches. In addition, we helped our families get ready to rock it at the Pride Parade with a crown and tiara making program and a rainbow beaded necklace program at our branches. And both of those were smashing successes with a lot of fun activities happening. And finally, top it all off was our own spectacular contingent in the San Francisco Pride Parade. More than 60 staffers and friends joined our team along with the bookmobile. They were decked out in special branded library shirts and capes and created quite a stir, as you can see. Among our 60 marchers were even some of our patrons, like Ray and Matt, who come to our monthly Sprightly program, it is weekly, a drop-in craft program in the Hormel Center. And in fact, the Pride contingent won an absolutely fabulous marching contingent ribbon from the San Francisco Pride Parade organizers. And this, I wanted to read you a little bit from the award letter we received from Sister Mary Peter, who handed us the award. This award was a recognition of your enthusiasm, collegial spirit, dedication, and service to our community each and every day, not only providing books and literacy support, but with a host of services to those struggling with housing insecurity, many of whom are LGBTQIA youth. Marking the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising and celebrating the theme of generations of resistance, we celebrate the way our San Francisco libraries keep the stories of resistance alive and share them from generation to generation. And that concludes my Pride report.
Thank you, Michelle. And that concludes the city librarian's report.
Thank you. Is there public comment? Any public comment?
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Thank you for those presentations and to the presenters. I was a little unclear with respect to the living library. I'm fascinated by the idea, and I think it looks very interesting. What I wasn't clear on was on this page contrasting to the human library, the first bullet point says, felt HL approach was too broad and sensational. I'm not sure what that means. And the third bullet point of 3 says, allowed for creative freedom, presumably the living library, didn't want to be limited by HL criteria. No themes, don't understand that. Complete anonymity of books, I guess that means the books could say their name. Have to use their forms, okay, they have some kind of forms at the human library, et cetera. I don't know what et cetera means. What I was particularly concerned about was that we have seen a general setup. As I say, I think it sounds interesting, but the only thing that was illustrated on this unnumbered page showing the setup was what looks like titles. And on the left column in the near the center, it says living books available, and showing whether they're on loan or if there's a wait list. So the titles are The Accidental Artist, Mo Roots, Outside Looking In, Tutoring the Next Generation, Western Edition A-1, A Work in Progress, and Zephyr, A West Wind for Change. There's nothing indicating here what particularly those might be about. I guess I'm thinking of one of the titles that I once ran into, something along the lines, I was Hitler's personal secretary. That seems to me to be an example of a title that would indicate very specific experience, knowledge, and something that somebody might want to read. And these titles are not at all explanatory as to what you might be getting, what you might be hearing about, possibly The Accidental Artist. But I understand that you have some catalog cards or information that would be on a catalog card concerning the books. I would certainly like to see that promptly. And I'm disappointed that that information is not provided. It seems to me that somebody looking at a book would like some basic information from the title and from a description, and including the author, especially since it was earlier mentioned that the anonymity was something that our library didn't want. So thank you very much for the presentations,
Thank
and
you.
I would like to see the information that you have that we don't have, which is the catalog cards that I understand were given to you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? No? No more comment? Are we ready for adjournment? Commission discussion?
Hi, I'd like to thank Suzanne and Michelle for their presentations. It's been a busy month for you guys, or a couple of months. Suzanne, I was there that day, but I wasn't there. I was there in the afternoon, so I missed the entire thing, and I was glad to see that John was there. It sounds like a great project, and I'd like to talk to you more about it later. And Michelle, as always, you do a great job. Thank you.
Any more commissioner comment?
I just want to add that the living library idea, I love it. It's fantastic. I hope we do expand it to other branches and other locations, because I think that's a very, very cool thing. Although I'm sure the books might be a little tired of repeating their stories over and over and over again, but yeah, no, I think it's fabulous.
I just want to say thank you to Suzanne and Michelle and Michael for your leadership. I love this moment in the agenda because it gives me so much pride in seeing and experiencing the incredible energy and passion and creativity of the staff and their dedication to what this library represents, and you really embody and make it happen to make this library so important in every community and every person that you encounter. And so it just is a great moment to always hear about these programs, and you know, the innovation is, the living books is just another one of these great examples. And to know that the library really embraces SF Pride in such a robust way and such a leadership way is really impressive and inspiring. So I just want to say thank you to the staff for taking the charge and making this library so great.
I just want to say that I was not surprised that Supervisor Safai said that in discussing the new library, that everybody is more excited about that than anything else. And it's so clear that San Francisco loves its libraries. And I think we're all proud of all the activity and competence that the library has and the place in the community. So on that note, does anyone have?
I think he wanted to say
So
something.
I just want to encourage the fellow commissioner to consider the option of a living book.
Oh.
Did you do it? Did you do it?
I participated, so I wasn't a living book, but I certainly have a conversation with a living book. So that's why I suggested fellow commissioners consider being a living book.
Okay. Is there a motion for adjournment?
No. There's got to be public comment.
Didn't we just have public comment?
No, that was public comment.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Adjournment, public comment. Our last item is adjournment. Is there any public comment?
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. As I've said before, I think you're cheating the public. If you don't have on your agenda what you used to have on the agenda and what many other bodies have, which is an item at the end that enables you to say what you would like to see on future agenda items. So, for example, when one of your members said she was concerned about a fait accompli, maybe on future agenda items you'd like to make sure that when you're taking major steps about new library building or anything like that, that you have the public knowledgeable about it and yourselves by having it on the agenda at the outset and not after part of it has already been decided and meetings already been held. I thought it was interesting that there was not a single comment from anybody in the public regarding the Mission Branch, your plans for the Mission Branch or the Chinatown Branch, other than my own, which commented on all three branches. You had quite a bit of comment from the third branch that you're considering changing, Ocean View, but why wasn't there a single comment from anybody in the public concerning the other two? That, I think, would be an interesting future agenda item. What's going on? What kind of participation is that? Even in the pictures that I saw of participation in one of the meetings, it looked to me as though perhaps 15 people were there. And particularly considering the Ocean View enthusiasm here tonight, one might have thought that there would be more folks. So I think a future agenda item might be, what kind of publicity is the library giving, both at the commission and in the neighborhoods, concerning projects that will concern the neighbors? Thank you.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move for a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned.